This video is all about changing your perspective on your relationship and on your partner so that you can stop resenting them, because how often do we resent our partners for their, what we would say, less than perfect behavior? And we want to show you a method you can use to re-fall in love with them and stop resenting them.
Yeah, and it all comes down to reframing our behaviors and why is it that we act the way we act, and especially in our more darker times. And that's because it comes down to, guys, we all have an inner child within us. There's this child that has these unmet needs that we didn't get when we were young, and they're starting to now come out when we are adults. And so we think, you're an adult, you should know better, but it's just not the case.
Everything that we do that is destructive or self-sabotaging or negative or causes pain and suffering in our adult lives comes down to the unmet needs of our inner child. So the unmet needs of our inner child is wherever in our childhood we weren't parented in a way that helped us reach our full development, we will then have an undeveloped part of ourselves that follows us all the way into adulthood. And what gets really confusing is when we see other adults, there's parts of the adult that are super adult-like obviously in his job or in my, let's say, like responsible parent or house duties. I seem like I got it all together. But then there's these other elements, maybe let's say in the jealousy department or in the ability to follow through on something and being able to finish something with delayed gratification. These are all developmental aspects that might not be done developing, and they come out in our adult life, so we're scratching our head confused as to like, why in this area do you seem to have so many issues all the time? And it doesn't seem like you should have this issue because you're an adult.
Yeah, and that's really, like, I want to hit on that. That's especially what we always do to each other in relationships, it seems. We think you should know better, and that's really where some dangerous pain really gets caused, because by projecting that we should know better or that we should be different than what we are, it sends a fundamental message that, like, as a being, we somehow are wrong or lacking. And obviously that's going to get met with defense mechanisms of pain and resentment or anger or lashing out or shutting down, cold shoulder, all the things we all have dealt with in relationships. So it really comes back to, can we see the innocent child that is actually doing a behavior, they're lashing out because they're trying to get love. So like Ash was saying, the you name it, the behavior that's coming out, like if it's say I am having a hard time admitting to mistakes, let's say, or she's pointing out a mistake and I just freak out and can't handle it, that's my inner child where I don't feel safe and I didn't maybe feel loved in my childhood when I made a mistake. And so as soon as she points out a mistake or I make a mistake in front of her, I'm all of a sudden going to go into really weird self-sabotaging behavior because I'm projecting my unmet need of feeling loved while I make a mistake.
Or let's say you have an abandonment issue, like maybe one of your parents left and your parents got a divorce and you felt abandoned, or you just felt abandoned in general by your parents. You're going to maybe struggle with being needy or clingy, and your partner is going to wonder, why are you this way? Like, we're fine. Like, why are you always so paranoid that I'm going to leave and so afraid? Unmet need of the child, being abandoned. So what we can do in our relationship is identify all of the triggers, we'll call them, in our relationship where we get very hurt, afraid, or angry. Just anything that drops us from an optimal state of being happy and in love, feeling free in our relationship, feeling safe in our relationship. And anything that's a trigger for us, we want to go back and see if this relates to anything in our childhood that might have created this defense mechanism inside of us that's now coming out in a self-sabotaging behavior. So that could be being passive aggressive and not ever feeling like you were allowed to speak or express yourself when you were a child. So now you have a passive aggressive personality when it comes to dealing with issues. Or maybe when you and your partner have deeper discussions and they're serious, you tend to shut down and go inside instead of being mature enough to continue having a conversation in something that's really uncomfortable.
And maybe that one would be not being taught in your youth how to handle emotions or uncomfortable situations.
Or running away. Or running away from things and and giving up when things are hard. All of these things are self-sabotaging behaviors that come from an unmet need of our inner child. And we're really excited to talk more about how we can heal these inner child wounds through inner work, identifying the theme of consciousness we're stuck in. Because if we have an unmet need from our childhood, it's almost as if that version of ourselves never finishes developing. So like that 7-year-old self or that 3-year-old self. And the rest of us keeps developing. I mean, that's why we keep going to school, we get jobs. Like, there are aspects of us that keep developing, which is why we appear to be adult-like.
Yeah.
But then there's aspects of us that got stuck in the 3-year-old self or the 7-year-old self. And that's what we dig up through inner work.
Yeah, and so that's why it's really important to basically assume that everyone is a child in an adult body. So because we all have some emotional wounds or unmet needs in our childhood that we're still carrying around with us. So it's kind of similar to the idea of perhaps you've heard the quote like everyone is fighting their own battle, or like, be aware of judging other people because you have no idea what they're going through. It's very similar to that. It's like, understand that everyone is actually a child inside that is just trying to be loved. And so when you are in your relationship and there is an uncomfortable situation happening, can you start to practice this, and in those moments that are difficult, step back for a second and realize, like, how can I see the child in my partner and see what this could really be about? What is it that they're really asking for love here? How can I show up in a loving way and not keep participating in the dispute? To just use one of my base examples, because I wasn't taught how to handle mistakes in a healthy way, if I make a mistake, I might go into like a really dark, self-sabotaging, loathing behavior. Like, I might just really beat myself up, judge myself really harshly. Like Ash was saying earlier, like maybe I start to extrapolate the judgment to like every area of my life, and it's like, whoa, man, you're taking this so deep and so far to a really dark place. So in those moments, instead of bickering with me and getting fighting, be like, come on, what are you doing? Like, snap out of it, get up, like, you're fine. Like, pushing me to like move on and to be like, it's not a big deal. Instead, showing up in a loving way and being like, hey, like, it's okay to make mistakes, you're still so loved, I still love you. Basically what we call reparenting. Show up as an unconditionally loving parent could have, but maybe just because of, they had their own issues, they couldn't show up for us in that way. So as in a partnership, you have the opportunity to reparent each other in a form of showing up in a loving way, and every time we expect that it should be different, it's always going to lead to more pain. So we have to really cut that belief out and instead just say, if I want to know true lasting joy and happiness and love in this relationship, I have to choose to show up in a loving way at every possible chance I can.
And we do want to say it's not your job as the partner to reparent, but to be aware of your partner's unmet childhood needs. That is a requirement. Yeah. So it's not your job to reparent in a sense. We cannot necessarily do that and fit that role. But the fact that we try to be aware of our partner's unhealed child and show up for them in a way that we know that was probably a wound for them, that kind of is our responsibility as partners. And it's a constant healing in the relationship dynamic, because all of us have these unmet childhood needs, and it's through our relationship, by having a mirror, by being triggered so often by our partner, that we have the opportunity to actually become aware of these wounds or these inner child unmet needs that we might have not known we had until they were pushed to their limit, in a sense. And
they usually come out in a relationship.
Yeah, it's usually so amazing that these instances happen, because if you follow them through and you do participate in the triggering moment together in this way, it leads to lifelong healing. So
it brings you a lot closer.
Yeah,
which is really powerful.
Yeah. So the change in perspective that we invite you to have is that your partner, somewhere in there, is a child still, and there's parts of your partner that are still undeveloped and stuck, maybe at 16 years old, or 3 years old, 7 years old. And there's certain traumatic instances or parenting styles that really imprinted on them and is causing them to have either an avoidant or a overcompensating defense mechanism in some way. And that is why they continue to habitually react and respond the way they do. And rather than dealing with the surface level of the issue and talking about the way that they are acting in that moment, go deeper and ask, where is this coming from? And, go on a journey of self-reflection and revisiting the inner child within each of you.
So if you really enjoyed this video, guys, leave some comments, ask questions. We'd love to help dive into this more with you with your specific concerns or things that maybe are coming up for you. And we'd love to get back to you. Also, subscribe, like, comment, all of it, you guys. We love you so much, and we really hope you enjoy this video. Namaste.
Namaste.